Broncos country, we're a few days away from the NFL draft. Now, you're either watching this a couple days before the draft, which I believe would be on a Tuesday, so 2 days before the draft, or the Wednesday before the draft, because I want to give at least a day just to have this information out there. Now, I know I said this was going to be what I think is going to happen for the Broncos, but I'll be honest, it's kind of difficult to see where the Broncos are going to go. We could go in a multitude of different directions. So, what I wanted to do instead is I thought of one more scenario. It's probably going to be obscure. It's probably not going to happen, but I wanted to go over one more scenario that could potentially happen for the Denver Broncos to prepare you guys. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my prediction on who I think the Broncos are going to select in the first round on Thursday. So if you do enjoy, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as the support is greatly appreciated. Of course, I'm going to do my NFL draft live stream for all 3 days. So I'm going to schedule a stream here soon. So if you want to go and tune into that, set a notification up. If you want to turn on notifications for the channel so you don't miss it, go ahead and do so. But yeah, let's get straight into this thing for my final 2025 mock draft for the Denver Broncos. So, starting things off, I want to go over my guys real quick because I've talked a lot about it, but I want to get this information out there of who are my guys? Who do I want the Broncos to draft? I'm going to give you 3 first-round my guys and 2 second-round my guys that I want the Denver Broncos to draft. So in the first round, I either want Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, or Luther Burden. Those are kind of my 3 guys who I'm hoping for. Of course, you know, I wouldn't mind guys if someone like a Matthew Golden fell to the Broncos, for example. I wouldn't mind that. You know, there are other players that I would like, but this would make me ecstatic if the Broncos drafted one of these 3 players on Thursday. Now, for the second round guys, I put Quinshon Judkins and Jaden Higgins because I really like Quinshon Judkins, but I feel like in most of my mocks, I didn't get to talk about him a lot. So I do want to throw out there that I am a big Quinshon Judkins fan, as well as a Jaden Higgins fan, although I do think Jaden Higgins might sneak into the late first, early second, potentially. But these are my guys, and it's kind of situational for the second round guys. If we go Travion Henderson in the first, right, then I'm kind of wanting Jaden Higgins there in the second. Or, you know, if we go with one of the receivers and Egbuka, Burden, maybe even a Matthew Golden, then I'm wanting to pick up Quinshon Judkins in the second round. And honestly, I wouldn't mind Judkins in the first. I think it would be a little bit early, but I wouldn't mind it if the Broncos decided to trade down. Now, that being said, let's get into the mock draft. Starting now, I forgot I put this slide here, but we have the draft picks for the Broncos. Here are all the current draft picks that we have. We have our own first round draft pick at 20th overall, our own second round at 51st overall, our own third at 85th overall, our own fourth at 122nd overall, and then we have our own 6th. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's 197. I think that's our own. But regardless, we have 3-6, 191st overall, 197th overall, and 208th overall. We have our own, and then one of the 6 rounds is from the Eagles when we traded Albert Okwuegbunam to them, and the other is when we traded Baron Browning to the Cardinals. That's how we got those 3 6th-round picks. Now, for this mock draft, we are actually starting off with a trade. Are we trading up? Are we trading down? Well, we are actually trading down with the Baltimore Ravens. So the Broncos were sending the 20th overall pick and one of our 6th round picks to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for the 27th overall pick, picking up an additional 3rd with the 91st overall pick, and picking up a 4th round with the 129th overall pick. So we're adding a 3rd and a 4th. So now with this pick, we would have still a 1st round pick, a 2nd round pick, 2 3rds, 2 4ths, and 2 6th round picks with this trade. And with the 27th overall pick, I am going with Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. For me, you know, you could go defense here, and I see a lot of Broncos fans who say, hey, let's go defense round 1. And I understand it. There is some intrigue there. If we did go that direction, I would probably want Walter Nolan. But the way I see it, we'd probably go somewhere on the defensive line, either edge or interior. And the way I see it, it's a super deep class. We can still get a high quality starter or a player that can turn into a starter in a few years in the third round with how deep it is. And we stacked our defense in free agency, right? So I want to get more weapons for Bo Nix. I want to add the top echelon weapons to help him out because free agency, I feel like that was for the defense. Now the draft, we're helping our offense. That's anyway my opinion and how I see it. And Emeka Egbuka, I've talked about him a whole lot. I talked about him in my last mock draft. He is an elite separator. He is going to get open and he's going to use his route running ability to create space. And he might be the best separator in this draft. And to me, that was the one area where we lacked in terms of our receiving weapons last year was the lack of separation, right? We have Sutton as the jump ball guy, Mims as the speed threat, but we just didn't have wide receivers who could get open. And I felt like Bo Nix was either, having to extend the play, taking off and running, which isn't a bad thing, but you want to have guys who can get open because there were some games where it was just frustrating with how the receivers couldn't get open. And I really like Emeka Egbuka. Like I said, Burden would be a good pick here too. But I was deciding between, honestly, Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, Travion Henderson, my three guys, shocker. But I decided to go the receiver route because of how deep of a running back class it is, and we can pick up a solid starter in the second and later. So I did go with the wide receiver here in Emeka Egbuka, and I've talked about it a whole lot. Emeka Egbuka would be the wide receiver 2 here for the Broncos. So yeah, this is where I think he would slot in. He would be the number 2 receiver, probably playing in the slot. You have Sutton as your X, Mims on the opposite side of him as your speed threat, and then you have Emeka in the slot with, of course, you're going to have Evan Ingram, who's essentially going to be another receiver for you at the tight end position. Vele as a bigger slot option, and Troy Franklin, who I still love the upside of for the future, with Trent Sherfield being a special teamer. Now, we actually have another trade for our second pick, and this is kind of where the scenario comes in, right? I've done trade down scenarios before, but this is where this new scenario that I haven't done yet for this year comes into play, and we are actually trading back up. Now, forgive me, I forgot to change the colors. This should be like a red kind of maroony color, maroon color for the Commanders, but I didn't change the color, my bad. So here is the trade. We are trading back up to the 29th overall pick, so 2 picks later, with the Washington Commanders. And in exchange, Washington, who doesn't have a whole lot of picks, they might want to try and move back, and this is where we take advantage. We send them our second-round pick, 51st overall, our third-round pick, 85th overall, and a 2026 third-round pick. Now, you could potentially add more. Maybe you have to include one of our other 6 to move up, but we are trading back up into the first round, so we're getting another player on day 1. Wouldn't pick on day 2, but you do get to pick up the extra 5th-year option with the player who you would select with this 29th overall pick. And for me, that is going to be Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State. I have to strongly consider that the Broncos are thinking about Travion Henderson because, in my opinion, you guys know this if you watch the channel, Henderson is my running back 2 in this class. I have him over Amari Hampton, but I do think the rest of the league has Amari Hampton as their running back 2. And quite frankly, from what I've heard in the reports and the rumors and all that stuff, I think he's probably going to go earlier than the Broncos pick. I don't think he'll be there for our selection, but that's just how I feel. As well as today when I'm recording this on the Monday before the draft, the 21st, I guess it's technically the 22nd now, but the Monday, there's been some rumblings about the Broncos potentially trading up. I think that's just due diligence, but, that's just thinking about moving up from 20. Who says we can't move up from our second-round pick back into the first? Now, I do understand this is probably an unlikely scenario, but I wanted to do it. One more mock draft, one more scenario, and I'm grabbing Travion Henderson here. As I mentioned, he is my RB2. He's one of my guys in this draft, getting 2 Ohio State players. And to me, Travion Henderson he has the potential to be an elite back with the breakaway speed, the ability to make players miss an open field. The one thing you're concerned about is the lack of vision, but, I'm not too worried about that as other people are. But the biggest thing I like about Travion Henderson is his ability to be a pass blocker, to stay in and be in pass pro if Bo Nix needs an extra protector. If the defense is bringing a blitz, he can stay in, be that extra blocker. That's one of the best things about Travion Henderson. He might be the best at blocking in this draft. There's some other guys who are good at it too, but the fact that you have that on top of his ability as a runner, as a receiver, as another weapon, I think that is incredibly valuable. And so the Broncos are trading back up into the first because, you could trade up into the early second, but it sounds like Henderson might be a late first round guy. And if we don't pick him with our first round pick, I would be all for trading up for him. I know a lot of Broncos fans might not like that because they want to pick up extra draft capital to have more bullets. But in my opinion, if you have a guy who you like, you got to go and you got to get him. And if we picked up Travion Henderson and Emeka Egbuka, man, that's an instant upgrade to our offense, which needs more weapons for Bo Nix. Now, here's how I would see him playing out. It's Travion Henderson as the RB1, and we've mentioned this before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Moving on to the third round, I'm going with my guy, and it's kind of similar to our mock draft last week. We got Norman-Lott. I'm not going to spend too much time on him. A developmental guy who can rotate in, get some snaps, and then can take over if we're not able to re-sign everybody on this list here, right? So, to me, I like the depth in this defensive line class. The interior and the edge, it's phenomenal depth. To me, I like our edge rushers, though, in Benito, in Jonathan Cooper, with Jonah Ellis, and then, I like that 3 rotation. To me, I want to upgrade the interior of our defensive line, right? Because you do got Zach Allen, you do got John Franklin Myers, and you do have Malcolm Roach. All their contracts are expiring, and hopefully you're able to bring them all 3 back, but I highly doubt it. Maybe you have to bring back Zach Allen and Malcolm Roach, and you can't bring back John Franklin Myers, or, maybe it's you bring back John Franklin Myers, but you can't bring back Malcolm Roach. I want to get in on this defensive line class because of how deep it is, and I do think it would be very, very beneficial to go best player available right here, especially, you traded up, you got your guys, you got Emeka Egbuka, you got Travion Henderson. Now go best player available, and with how deep this line class is, Norman-Lott here at pick, 91, because remember, we had 2 third-round picks from the trade down, so that's why we still have a third-round pick. I forgot about that when I said we wouldn't pick on day 2 in this scenario. We would still have a third-round pick, and you're getting a really talented defensive lineman here. And I like the depth. I love the strength of this interior defensive line class, and I want in on it at some point fairly early. I think, 3rd, 4th is the latest, but I like the 3rd round as kind of the area to target the interior defensive lineman. I like the guys in this range of Norman-Lott. You got Joshua Farmer, you got Ty Robinson, you got CJ West. There's some guys here who I like, and kind of the 3rd round is that sweet spot for me, after you get another potential wide receiver and running back for Bo Nix to help out the offense. Moving on to the 4th round, we're picking up a Colorado kid and Gunnar Helm at tight end. I still want to draft a tight end. I know we have Evan Ingram, but in my opinion, you have Evan Ingram on a 2-year contract. He's going to mostly be a receiver, but tight end, they take a while to develop, typically around 2 years, and that's how long we signed Evan Ingram for. Now, if Evan Ingram succeeds and you want to bring him back, absolutely you can bring him back, but then you have Gunnar Helm available and ready as well. Plus, a lot of times on the offense, you're going to run 12 personnel with 2 tight ends, so it's good to have a guy who you want to develop and who you like the upside of, and I like Gunnar Helm for that. For me, Troutman would still be your tight end too. Give Helm the time to develop. He could be a healthy scratch most of the year. This could be a redshirt year for Gunnar Helm. And then he can learn behind Adam Troutman, who is more of your pure inline tight end. He's going to go out and run pass patterns. He's going to stay in and block, where Evan Ingram is going to be more of a slot receiver type of option for you. He's going to line out wide and just essentially be another receiver for you. So he's got those 2 guys to learn from. And you got Nate Atkins, Lucas Kroll, and Thomas Yasman there as well. Now, moving on to the 4th round with another 4th round pick from the trade at pick 129. And you can call me biased because many people might think this is a little early, but I'm going Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. Of course, I'm born and raised in Colorado, but Oklahoma State, that is my alma mater. And to me, I think Ollie Gordon has really not gotten a fair shake this draft cycle. I know this past season wasn't great, right? But as an Oklahoma State fan, I can tell you that season was horrible for everyone. You look back 2 seasons ago, and if he started pretty much every single game, got majority of the snaps at running back, he had a potential to win the Heisman. I don't think he would have beaten out Jaden Daniels, but he could have been top 3 potentially. And to me, our offensive line and especially our offensive coordinator wasn't great at Oklahoma State last year. So to me, I don't really think Ollie Gordon had the best year, and there were some circumstances outside of his control that led to that. So to me, I still think people are undervaluing Ollie Gordon, and I think whatever team drafts him is going to get a steal at the running back position because Ollie Gordon, he's really good. I don't think the combine speed, obviously his 40 time wasn't great, but I think he played faster than what he showed at a 4.6 or whatever, but he's a big, powerful back. Doesn't have to start right away. He can develop, he can learn. And to me, I really like Ollie Gordon. Maybe that's just my bias from being an Oklahoma State fan, but I do have Ollie Gordon here at pick 129. And to me, it would be Travion Henderson, McLaughlin, Estime. And then you'd have Ollie Gordon as that 4th spot who would learn, develop, maybe same thing as Gunnar Helm. You take a year, you redshirt him, doesn't have to suit up for any games. He could be a healthy scratch. And then just have him learn. I know I said that already, but to me, still like Ollie Gordon, still think he's going to be a steal of a prospect. And honestly, you wouldn't have to redshirt him. I think he could come in and make an impact right away. If we did draft Henderson and Ollie Gordon, right, I think you could start Travion Henderson, and if you needed a thumper, you could either bring in Estime, you could bring in Gordon. Plus, Ollie Gordon, he ran some trick plays with us at Oklahoma State. He has the ability to throw the ball. He's thrown some passes in his career. I think he can be a bruiser. So to me, love Ollie Gordon as a prospect. And like I mentioned earlier, I think whatever team drafts him is going to get a steal. Moving on to the 6th round, and oh boy, yeah, this isn't looking too good for me, right, with my bias. But as I mentioned last time, Nick Martin is a do-it-all linebacker, can rush the passer, can drop back in coverage, can stop the run if you need him to. To me, he is one of the most underrated players in this entire draft. I don't think he should be going in the 6th round. I think he should be going in the 5th at the latest, maybe even the 4th. Again, call me biased, whatever, but to me, Nick Martin is one of the most underrated players in this entire draft, and I like adding depth to the linebacker room because he brought in Dre Greenlaw, who did get some playing time last year, but was coming off of an Achilles injury. You have Alex Singleton, who's coming off of an ACL injury, and although he did play the rest of the game in Tampa on that torn ACL, is he going to be at 100%? You got Drew Sanders, the former 3rd-round pick, who's moved between edge and inside linebacker and has dealt with injuries. So how is he going to perform, and how is he going to play at the linebacker position? Then you bring in Nick Martin, who I do like as a potential depth guy who can take over and become a starter, with Justin Strnad being your veteran backup presence, right? If something happens to one of the starters and you need someone to go in and you don't feel comfortable with Drew Sanders or Nick Martin being a full-time inside linebacker, you plug in Justin Strnad, who played okay. And then as well as you got Lavelle Bailey, who was the UDFA in last year's class out of Fresno State. Finally, moving in at pick 208, it's been a constant here for pretty much all my mock drafts. If it hasn't been Jake Majors, it's been Jonah Monheim. I'm just sticking with Jake Majors, 6'3", 315-pound lineman, 23 years old, who's a senior, and he has the ability to play center and guard. Doesn't have to start right away, can sit, develop, and he can be a rotational piece for you. And to me, he would be the top of the backups for the interior offensive line, right? Obviously, Luke Wattenberg, Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, those are your starters. But then the depth guys right now on the roster, it's Alex Forsyth and it's Nick Gargiulo, Gargiulo, 7th-round pick last year, and Alex Forsyth, a 7th-round pick 2 years before. Obviously, Jake Majors, just a one-round difference of him being drafted earlier. But I do like Jake Majors more as a depth center or guard. And maybe you have Jake Majors as your backup center, just purely, and then you would have Forsyth and Gargiulo as the backup guard potential. But yeah, that's Jake Majors. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at this offense. We'll run through this really quick. Bulls, Powers, Wattenberg, Miners, and McGlinchey. Those are your starters, with Jake Majors, Alex Forsyth, Nick Arzulo being your backup interior guys, and Alex Palczewski, Matt Pert being your backup tackles. By the way, if it isn't obvious, the guys highlighted in orange are your rookies, and the guys highlighted in blue are the new signings from this free agency. Quarterback, Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, Sam Ellinger. Receivers of Sutton, Emeka Buka, Marvin Mims, Franklin, Bailey, and Sherfield. Tight ends, Evan Ingram, Adam Troutman, Gunnar Helm. And the running backs, Travion Henderson, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, Ollie Gordon, and Michael Burton at the fullback position. On the defense, here's what it looks like. Zach Allen, DJ Jones, John Franklin Myers, Omar Norman-Lott, the third-round pick coming in with Malcolm Roach and Ioma Wazarike. I like the edge rushers here, Jonathan Cooper, Dondre Tillman, Nick Benito, and Jonah Ellis, right? I like that core. Jonathan Cooper, steady presence. Nick Benito really had a breakout year. Jonah Ellis had a really solid rookie season, former third-round pick last year. And Dondre Tillman signed his exclusive rights contract to I do like the upside of. You see the linebackers there with the new additions of Dre Greenlaw and draft pick Nick Martin, with the cornerbacks being Pat Surtain, Jaquan McMillan in the slot, Riley Moss, Chris Abrams, and Damari Mathis, and then the safeties, of course, Brandon Jones, PJ Locke, J.L. Skinner, Talanoa Hufanga, De'Laren Turner-Yell, and Sam Franklin. Now, here is my prediction for the 20th overall pick. I was going to do suspense, but I really didn't build up to that, did I? But my prediction at pick 20, or doesn't even have to be pick 20, if the Broncos do decide to trade down and still stick in the first round, to me, I think we have to stick in the first round. I think the fifth-year option is just too valuable. So whether you trade down in the first or you trade down to the second and you have to trade back up to the first, my prediction for the Broncos, and maybe you just trade down and you pick at the top of the second, which I wouldn't mind, but I would prefer to have the fifth-year option, you know. But my prediction for the first pick of the Broncos this year is Travion Henderson, which is one of my guys, and I'd be happy with. I think if I had to choose, I would prefer Emeka Egbuka, but I would also love Travion Henderson and Luther Burden, as I mentioned at the top of the video. But that is my final mock draft for the Denver Broncos. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below, as the support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.